Well, here we are again talking about comedy and offense and crime and freedom of speech, and this time we're talking about Kunal Kamra and a video that he just put out about a show he did at the Habitat Center, in which there was one particular joke that sort of led to the supporters of Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde taking offense. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about what happened quickly, but also what the law says and whether or not Kunal Kamra has actually broken the law. And secondly, what this means for the ease of doing business in the city of Mumbai going forward. Now, before we start, remember, like, share, subscribe, and it would be really helpful if you signed up for our membership as well. Here's what happened. Kunal Kamra's latest stand-up gig, basically uploaded on YouTube and his Instagram handle. There was one particular joke that angered the supporters of Eknath Shinde, who's Maharashtra's Deputy Chief Minister. Now, Kamra took a swipe at Maharashtra politics, and he basically talked about how the Shiv Sena broke away from the BJP, and then he said a portion of the Shiv Sena broke away from the Shiv Sena, and the same thing happened with the NCP, and then he referred to one guy in particular, and he used the term Gaddar or traitor with reference to this one person. Now, you can find that video, and I'm sure you already have, so I don't have to repeat what was said, but it's interesting to note that Kamra did not use anybody's name. So he didn't actually say who he was talking to, and this is interesting from a legal point of view. We'll come back to it. But the references were so obvious that he was talking about Shiv Sena Supremo Eknath Shinde, and he's a politician from Thane who used to be a rickshaw driver. He represents the Thane Assembly constituency of Maharashtra. So there was no grey area about who he was referring to, and the fact that Eknath Shinde's rebellion against Uddhav Thackeray and the fact that he won the symbol and he won the name of the party and the legacy of Bal Thackeray technically is what Kunal Kamra was talking about. Now, what happened after that is that the joke received a violent reaction from the Shiv Senics, who have a history of reacting quite let's say dramatically whenever something bothers them. Now, how did they react in this particular case? They went to the property or to the venue where this show was actually recorded, which is the Habitat in Mumbai, in Khar West in Mumbai, and they basically broke everything they could find. And they made videos of themselves breaking everything they could find, in the sense that you can see all of the faces in those videos. They called it a conspiracy to malign Shinde. The Shiv Sena lodged also a complaint against Kamra after vandalizing the premises. They lodged a complaint against Kamra, and they lodged complaints against Sanjay Raut, Aditya Thackeray and Rahul Gandhi. Now, the workers have staged protests in Mumbai. They have burnt photographs of Kunal Kamra. A complaint has been filed by Shiv Sena leader Rahul Kanal, who called it a pre-planned criminal conspiracy and a systematic paid campaign to malign the reputation, image and goodwill of Mr. Eknath Shinde. He said, and I'm quoting here, the acts committed by Mr. Kunal Kamra, including making statements that hurt public sentiment, utter obscene words and make derogatory insinuations and innuendos targeting Shri Eknath Shinde, are not only offensive but also unlawful, end quote. The FIR has been registered against Kamra on the complaint that has been filed by the Shiv Sena. Now, the police on Monday have also arrested Shiv Sena functionary Rahul Kanal and 11 others for ransacking the venue of that Mumbai hotel where Kamra had actually recorded his video. After that, and the interesting point is here, they started a political slugfest in Mumbai. There was a very important statement made by Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. He said he's not against comedy, but disrespecting someone is not okay. So he basically says, and I'm quoting here, such low-level comedy disrespecting the Deputy Chief Minister is not okay. He said again, he should know, and he's referring to Kunal Kamra, he should know that Maharashtra's people showed who the Gaddar is and who is not in the 2024 elections. People decided who has the legacy of Bal Thackeray. And stressing that Kunal Kamra should apologize, Mr. Fadnavis said, you cannot legitimize your fault by showing the Constitution. The Constitution gives us freedom, but it's not absolute. You cannot encroach on others' freedoms, and there are limitations to it. And he's referring to the fact that at the end of the show, Kunal Kamra held up the Constitution. And so for those of you who don't know, this is the Indian Constitution. It gives me the freedom to do what I do, but also gives you the freedom to do what you find necessary as well, for as as long as it's within the constitution. Now, Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar had also said, and this is a slight deviation from the Chief Minister's point of view, and that's interesting. He said, Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar, who's NCP, said no one should go beyond the law and the constitution. One should speak within limits. Differences of opinion may exist, but care must be taken to ensure that the police department does not intervene due to their statements. So, is he basically saying that yes, there is a problem, but it's not a job for the cops? That might be an interesting thing to look into. In the meantime, Maharashtra Minister Yogesh Kadam on Monday said the location of Kunal Kamra is being traced. Strict action will be taken in the matter as per the law. And speaking to reporters, Shiv Sena leader Kadam has also said the law is equal to all and he does not support any action of his party workers vandalizing the studio. There was one, I think one television channel that carried a recorded phone call where there was one Shiv Sainik abusing Kunal Kamra on the phone and said, "Where can we find you? We're going to come after you." And Kunal Kamra says, "I live in Tamil Nadu, you can come look for me if you want." So there is, I mean, I'm assuming he is receiving those phone calls at this point. Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray faction leader Sanjay Raut has basically demanded that Mr. Devendra Fadnavis recover the damages of the vandalized property from the Shiv Sainiks, because Raut has said this is Gundaraj. Effectively, what had happened was, remember, they were not long ago, exactly a week ago, in fact, they were rioters in Nagpur who damaged property, and the state government had said that they will recover the cost of the damaged properties from those who had rioted. So here you have Sanjay Raut saying, okay, now do it again, and in this case recover it from the Shiv Sena, which is an ally with the BJP. And so, I mean, this is normally what happens. Politicians make statements against each other, but here let's get down to the business end of the conversation. The Habitat, which is a performance and event venue in Mumbai, put out a statement saying that they're shutting down after the Shiv Sena workers vandalized their premises. In an Instagram post that they put out, the studio has said, and I'm quoting, "We're shocked, worried and extremely broken by the recent acts of vandalism targeting us." It says that the artists are solely responsible for their own views and their creative choices, and they've never been involved in the content of what is actually being put up. But recent events have made us rethink about how we get blamed and targeted every time, like we are proxy for the performer. And so they're shutting down to figure out the best way to provide a platform for free expression without putting ourselves and our property in jeopardy. Now remember, the Habitat is also the place, the same venue where the controversial India's Got Latent was filmed, and there was a controversy that came up about it last month. Now, two questions to ask. One is ease of doing business, and the other one is whether or not the law has been broken. Let's first examine the law. So from the legal perspective, satire and parody and jokes are protected under our freedom of speech, Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, which is a fundamental freedom that allows us the right to express ourselves with some conditions, which is, public order, defamation, morality and the integrity of India. Now, satire specifically involving public figures has come up in the past, and the Supreme Court in the past had said that people in public office must have a thicker skin, they must tolerate greater scrutiny and criticism in a democracy. So basically, the Supreme Court at one point it said, if you don't like a show, don't watch it. At another point it said that if you are in public office, you'll have to develop a thicker skin, and you're going to have to be able to take jokes and criticism, and so a joke is not automatically a crime. Now, from this particular case, FIRs have been registered, like I said, when it comes to defamation and also basically, offending people. But Kunal Kamra has not taken anyone's name. So he could argue in court that, that basically he's not broken the law because he has not taken anyone's name. In the defamation argument, if it is argued in court that it's pretty obvious who he's talking to, defamation is only defamation if you have said something that is untrue, technically, and that's the simple, justification. Basically, if any individual publishes something about you that is untrue and ruins your reputation, publishes, not just like if I was sitting and talking to one other person, that doesn't count for defamation. But if I mass publish something that is untrue and ruins your reputation, that amounts to defamation. This is the simplistic argument. Lawyers, don't jump at me. So does it fall into defamation if he has not taken a name? That'll be an interesting question. He could also argue that, hey, nothing I have said is untrue. So, but what will happen in this particular case is that it will go to court, because this is not a case that is, it's not subject to investigation per se, even though the police will of course do their bit to investigate. It will have to go to court, and this is obviously it is a non-cognizable bailable offence, which means it should not ideally involve arrest, and unless the court gives an approval to arrest the individual, the police will normally, in a non-cognizable case, not arrest anyone. So the question will be, this will eventually wind up in court, what those arguments are going to be in court and how that actually plays out. But it does look from the face of it that no clear law has been broken as of now by this by this comedy performance. It will be subject to arguments made before the court to see whether or not the court sees anything as wrong, as having gone wrong here. Let's look at the second part of this conversation as to what happens when venues like the Habitat receive the kind of anger that they have received. Remember, at the end of the day, it's still a business, and the city of Mumbai is the financial capital of the country. It's the entertainment capital of the country. The studios, the films, the television stations, all of which run out of the city of Mumbai. So we have comedians, writers, filmmakers, actors, performers who are always working at the risk of legal action. What will happen? What is that chilling effect that actually plays out in the city? Studios, platforms, venues will start to avoid, if they're not doing it already, edgy content. And international companies who might want to invest more and more in Indian entertainment will become a little shy of the lack of freedom and safety for entertainers, and for businesses specifically, because there are no clear demarcations of what is allowed and what is not, and lawyers normally have to try and figure out whether this might result in some group taking offense or not. Business uncertainty, right? So political backlash, which leads to FIRs, police action, raids, demolition of properties, effectively, the vandalizing of that property was against the law, but there were cops standing around while this was happening. They were not doing anything. So which side of the vandalism does the police actually stand on? And for businesses, then that becomes a really gray area or a difficult area to actually assess any sort of risk. This will also worry tourists. Remember that the Habitat sits in a hotel that will make tourists uncomfortable if they say that, we never really know how this is going to play out or whether or not we are safe. And I just want to point out, very interestingly, freedom of expression is increasingly becoming a factor in the idea of ease of doing business. Now, the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index is measured for time taken for permits, contract enforcement, tax filing, and business registration. So technically, non-economic factors like freedom of speech doesn't come into that category, but it's starting to be worked in. So political stability, media freedom, expression of rights has started to come into these ratings as well. So even though there's no direct marker to freedom of expression, media freedom and satire are indications of transparency and tolerance, and that's important to global companies who want to bring in creative talent. So for several people who work in Mumbai, for people who want to invest in Mumbai, for people who are looking to come in from overseas and perform in Mumbai, remember, we're just starting to see an increase in our concerts and shows, and artists who are coming in from around the world to grace large venues. So what happens to entertainment, advertising, media and journalism, tech and content platforms, and even hospitality and live events, and these are big businesses, especially for this city. What happens to all of these businesses if this is how we get a reaction, especially from a portion of the political class that's part of the government at this point? So these are all questions that we'll actually have to look at as citizens of this of the city and of the country, as how comfortable we are, because at the end of the day, the law does allow us to take offense. We are allowed to protest. protest. We're allowed to write strongly worded editorials. We're allowed to put out videos of your own. You're not allowed to threaten. You're not allowed to rough people up. You're not allowed to vandalize and destroy property, public or private. You're not allowed to beat anybody. So, or worse, you're not allowed to resort to any violence. The law is very clear about how you should take offense, how you should protest that, and how you should demand justice. And then there is always the courts of law, where you can proceed to the courts and you can ask for justice if you feel that you have been offended in any way. But somehow it does seem like those lines are now being grayed and colored across. So asking you as a citizen of the country, even more so, if you're a citizen of Mumbai, or if you're a citizen of the country who lives overseas and you have a particular experience of what comedians are allowed to say, leave it in the comment section of where you believe that line should really lie.